You have to take a leap of faith and invest into something that you believe that on the other side of it is going to come to fruition. It's a journey of evolution and learning and experimentation. Something has to change inside you for you to drive the company to another level, because that company is run by someone who is not you right now. You're an athlete going out there every day in the ring. You need coaches to take a look at every different vertical so you can keep working on them. There's never going to be a perfect time to start. So you just have to start.
Welcome to the Living Richly podcast. It's so great to have you back with us this week. We appreciate you tuning in every week, and we're really excited about this week's show.
This is going to be great.
We have a great friend and guest who's joining us today in the studio, Nazim Ahmed. Naz, it's so great to have you here today.
Awesome being here. I can't wait. Get into it.
Yeah, you and I have been coaching together now. I've known each other for about 3 years, but we've been coaching together for about 3 years, and it's been amazing to watch your growth journey. You're the former founder and CEO of CanvasPop, which was a digital art to print sort of gig right on the internet, served over 1 million people, I think, by the time it was all said and done.
Yeah.
Exited that in 2021 very successfully. Currently involved in a great new venture called Remix that you're going to be telling us about. This is a really cool play in the digital space, but totally different approach. And you're an entrepreneur, you're a dad, you're a husband, and you're here today to tell us your story. Welcome, man.
Thanks for having me. I can't wait to get into it. We've had, a great relationship over the last few years, and big fan of coaching, but I'm excited to get deeper into the whole story here.
Yeah. It's going to be great. I've got a question right out of the gate, and it's around entrepreneurship. Are you born an entrepreneur, or do you become an entrepreneur? So maybe a little bit of your background. What led you to become a serial entrepreneur, really?
Yeah. So my journey is based on how I got here is based on 4 basic pillars. So number 1 is my experience love for science. Number 2 is my experience love for company building and big business. Number 3, my love and experience around art and design. And then number 4, my love for entrepreneurship and startups. And over the last 20 years, there's been experiences in my life that have hit each of those pillars that have gotten me to this stage.
Yeah. When did you know? Like, these are the things that attracted you, but what was that moment where you just knew that you would not be happy in a job, following sort of the pattern most people follow? One of the things I really admire about you is you've had dreams that you've gone after, and you've gone after them with your whole heart. But what was that moment? Is there a particular moment where all that clinched, or was it an evolution?
It was definitely an evolution. My father came here from India with a small suitcase to do his PhD in Canada. He came here to live the Canadian dream. And he was a scientist, a physicist and chemist, moved to Ottawa, grew his family here. So I was raised in a science family, and I was raised to be a scientist. So I went on to do a degree in genetics, and my whole life was around science. So when I went to Western, I was surrounded around a lot of business people. So Western was all about Richard Ivey School of Business, one of the best business schools in the world, and started hanging out with some of these people that were talking about different things in science. So I'd go to my science classes, I'd hang around with business people, and over time that started opening up opportunities and thinking more about business. But when I really knew is when I finished my genetics degree, I decided not to become a scientist. I did a couple of years of software engineering, and at that point, I'm going to experience this world of business. So I went and worked for a biotech company for a few years. And I loved it. It was out of San Francisco. It was a large $1 billion, publicly traded company. But nights and weekends, every single night, every single weekend, I had a group of entrepreneurial friends, and we would do these things called side hustles. We would come up with ideas.
Wow.
And try ideas and try to create products and see if they work. And it was failure after failure after failure. So I'd work my day job during the day, like my serious day job. And then nights and weekends, it would be projects and, several failures. and one of them hit, which we can get to in a moment.
Yeah.
And once that thing hit, it was just a life that took it on its own.
Amazing.
I'm sitting here thinking about, there's that saying about never be the smartest person in the room.
So I don't have a problem with that. That comes naturally to me.
That's pretty obvious right now. All right. Well, John.
I don't know about that.
Incredible journey. Maybe talk to us. So as you started to make that shift, what were some of those initial challenges that you faced?
Yeah. So obviously, those nights and weekends, several different ideas didn't work. One idea wasn't actually supposed to be a business. My best friend at the time, Adrian Selimovic, and I, we did this side project where we took people's DNA and turned it into pieces of personalized artwork.
Wow.
Never meant to be a business. And what ended up happening was I loved this intersection of art, design, and technology. And I ended up spending literally every hour on it. Where my day job suffered, and I ended up getting fired from my job.
Love it.
What a great story.
Yeah.
Because all I was thinking about was this intersection of, DNA, art, technology, design. So, DNA 11 was not making any money at the time. So I decided to cash out all my RSPs and I went all in to try to make this thing work. I knew it wasn't going to be a big business, but I was so passionate about this intersection, personalization, art, design, technology. I said, give it a try instead of taking a step back and then jumping into a different biotech job and say, okay, I got to get serious here.
Right.
And that was the moment when I went all in that I knew that I was wired a little bit differently.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, big part of the Living Richly message is encouraging people to not live the supposed life, not live the scripted family expectations, societal expectation, to follow your heart, right? And to go for it, which you clearly did. And I love the story about getting fired from your day job because you were so passionate about your dream and that's where your energy was going. Can you take us inside perhaps your head and your heart back in those days? You were kind of early stage entrepreneur, leaning into it. What was your self-talk? What were the mindsets you were embracing or perhaps even struggling with as you were getting started?
So a lot of it has to do around, one thing is mindset. And then number two is just practical matters from cash flow to trying to keep your business alive. So, when we started, launched the site, there's still not a lot of traffic towards it. There's not a lot of sales. You're burning away your savings. Everyone around you is like saying, are you an idiot?
Yeah.
So that's a problem. And then there's this moment called the leap of faith. And while I've been building businesses, there's always these moments where you have to take a leap of faith and invest into something that you believe that on the other side of it is going to come to fruition and is going to open up new possibilities. And for me, when I looked at this product, I thought, no, it's not going to be $1 billion product, but it's going to give me experience and it's going to give me resources to do other things if this ends up working. So as on my last, a couple of $1,000s, nothing was working. Then USA Today wrote an article on DNA 11. I remember being with my co-founder out for breakfast that morning. We got back to our desks. I was already planning on moving back with my parents. And then the sales just started pouring in.
Wow.
And then as soon as that came in, then we started, we had the cash flow to improve the site, expand the product line. And then from there, there's CanvasPop, there's other startups that I had resources for and exit, but we'll get into that in a moment.
So
exciting.
You're launching into this. I'm hearing you're cashing out RSPs, your savings are dwindling, like all
getting ready to move back in with mom and dad.
To move in with mom and dad.
I was close.
I don't know if you were married at the time, but here's your dad who was a scientist, his own background. And this is often what keeps people from taking that leap of faith are the people around them, their loved ones, their family members who are, what was the response? Were they supportive? Were they thinking, what on earth are you doing? How did you kind of deal with the influence of the people closest to you?
Yeah. So first thing is whenever you start something new, there's always going to be a lack of belief, right? And I think you have to just accept that. It used to bother me before when I started, building a product or started building the site and people wouldn't believe in it. And I just realized over time, no, that's just natural tendency. I do the same thing when I hear about new ideas. So you just have to accept that, number one. Number two, you just have to show through action and execution, and over time you start seeing small results, which lead to medium results, which lead to bigger results. Then all of a sudden you start winning one person over at a time. My parents start looking at me and saying, okay, well,
this might work.
We'll keep you.
You're not a PhD published in Science Magazine or in Cell. However, this is you're pursuing your passion. You're doing something interesting. Then all of a sudden, people around you, collaborators, start coming and helping out, and then your friends start helping out, and then your customers start liking your product, and they start helping out, and then it just starts growing from there.
Yeah.
But as an entrepreneur, you have to get that flywheel started, and it's all on you and your co-founders to do that.
It's amazing how when you put something out in the universe, right? The universe, we often say it here, the universe conspires with you.
Yeah.
And you start to see those right people coming into your life.
But let's face it, like fear is a thing, right? You talked about how the people around us, because they love us, they want to protect us, will often not be too jazzed about our ideas or our pursuits or our dreams. And really, often that really is what's driving their behaviors. They don't want us to get hurt. So that can hold us back. But the other is fear of failure, fear of the unknown. How did that show up for you, and how did you overcome it throughout your career?
Sure. So, there's always, whenever you're climbing a mountain, you get to a stage where you have to reinvent yourself. You have to keep evolving. So everyone, when DNA 11 started going, everyone's like, well, you can't do this forever. You realize that. And then other people are like, you realize it's going to be a tiny little business. And it's like, yeah, absolutely. But we're going to use these resources, this experience, and we're going to figure something out to expand it. So then the mobile photography, space started hitting. As soon as the iPhone launched 2007, we saw that explode. So we just used all of our experience to launch a sister site called CanvasPop.com to allow you to take your, mobile photographs and have it printed as art. And that started growing tremendously. It went from 1 to 1.8 million to 3 to 5.6 to it just started growing revenue wise. And then that's another curve. And then you start, then you start getting another source of belief. But then at a certain point in time, you're like, well, it's just an e-commerce company. How big can it get? Then you take those resources and we built an ERP and a manufacturing system in the back. Then we opened up something called an API, so mobile and web applications can plug into us and leverage our back end and our infrastructure. Now you're a platform, and you just keep evolving like that up to the point where CanvasPop became the leading, photo to art brand in the entire world, competing against Costco and Shutterfly and, Walmart. And then the largest manufacturer in the world in this space wanted the best consumer brand to plug into their facility. And they purchased us for an excellent exit. And that's a journey. It's a journey of evolution and learning and experimentation. And I encourage everyone to just keep that evolution going.
Yeah, I love that. It's this whole, we often, we look at people that have achieved significant accomplishments, and we often look at the achievement, and we fail to recognize the little steps daily,
the journey,
little by little, slowly by slowly, the micro evolution that led them to ultimately this. If you hadn't taken that risk way back when you decided to pursue a different direction, your life may have turned out very, very differently. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the core of it is you just have to really believe in what you're doing. And for me, it was never about, putting ink on paper. It was about creating a customer experience that the end customers fell in love with, right? So every component of our site was absolute perfection. The speed and the engineering that we put in our back end created that experience. So I believed in that. I believed in the culture we were building internally and how we treated our employees and how they were learning and using cutting edge technology. So from the exterior, everyone's just thinking, oh, it's ink on paper. But internally, it's all these other things of creating this amazing, I look back on it as science, is this working cell, that's growing and communicating, that's creating value in the world. That's the exciting part about it. So it's that belief in what you're doing, I think, is the core of everything.
Yeah. So externally, you've got this success going on. You've got, your companies are growing. Everyone's probably looking at you going, this guy's, got it made. Life is great. Everything is perfect. Was it?
Yeah. So great question. So there's always, series of growth where everything's going well. Then all of a sudden they hit a certain point of extreme difficulty, right? So, a couple of stories, for example. there was one moment in our journey, I think it was 2011, where all of our backend systems were falling apart. The website wasn't working correctly. And there's just no way that we could create like a profitable business working that way. So we had to hire a big engineering team, which increased our overhead substantially. And it took a long time to rebuild everything. And then we started running out of cash. So what I had to do was take a second mortgage out of my home at the time, which is back on it was absolutely insane. Yeah. And then my wife, pregnant with our first child, Jaden, this is, before my daughter, Eliana, we had to go to the bank and she had to believe in me that I was doing the right thing and sign on those papers. So we took the line of credit. I bridged the company. And then once the new back end turned on, the speed of the website went up, the conversion went up, the profitability went up. And then all of a sudden we can get on the good stuff, which is creating new products and building the company. But it was that leap of faith. And if I hadn't done it, the company would have died.
Right.
Where a lot of our competitors never invested into that back end experience and the mobile experience and so on. And they all ended up dying.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think a lot of folks can relate to, we know it takes a leap of faith to step out of the life we're living now into what we envision. But often when hardship starts to show up and obstacles start to show up, fear starts to really magnify. And I think a lot of folks often stop just shy of the goal, right? And yet you just kept making that risk. So in addition to the leap of faith, tremendous courage is required. And what I love about courage is it's fear walking. It's not this attitude where I'm not afraid. Because I think we've had some conversations at times at critical junctures in your story where you're like, oh shit, like this just happened. I'm not sure how this is going to work. And we, you work it through. How often, and did imposter syndrome follow you around? I think a lot of leaders watching the show can relate to imposter syndrome, where you're like, if people only knew. There's the person you see, there's the person, the public me that you see, and then there's the private me, sometimes cowering in the corner going, what am I going to do next? What was the experience for you with imposter syndrome?
So I think it comes down to acceptance that this entrepreneurial thing is really fucking hard.
Yeah.
Right? And you just have to accept that. Whether you're building $100 million company, a $1 million company, if you just look at the statistics alone, I think 95% of companies fail. And it's this weeding out process that has to happen to train an entrepreneur to fail early, because in the future, you will not be able to scale that company and grow that company and hit all those different obstacles. So for me, it's just, I finally got to peace over time that accepting that's difficult gets you to the point where you can start figuring out problems a lot faster and a lot sooner. So that was number one. And then the second part is just a framework that I've created now when I hit obstacles, and we could chat about that if you want.
Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah, we want to hear about it.
I want to hear exactly about that. Yeah. So what's the framework?
So the base of everything I do is always coaching, and we're going to talk about coaching, but I believe, every professional athlete has a coach, the sports team has a coach. You have to have coaching to be able to look at your highlight reel. So that's the base of everything. Once I hit in really tricky spots, I work on two tracks. The first is physiology. So I spend a few days, and the first thing that I do is I say, okay, let me get my physiology straight to attack this problem. So number one, I do a water fast for 2 days. Okay. Only drink water, clears the mind, clears the head, gets you focused, and prepares you kind of physically to be able to tackle the problem.
Right.
Then once that's done, then I start counting my calories and making sure I'm eating the right amount of calories, and then increase my exercise and get my mind, my body straight. And that's the first, week. And then the background of thinking the problem. Then the next, I get into the root cause analysis and find out what is the one problem I can fix immediately that'll have the highest impact into the problem that I'm at or the juncture I'm at.
I love that.
Once I identify that, then you go to your team and you bring in all of their expertise. They know, they bring in all the data, you bring in great minds, and I have a phenomenal team. My co-founders, Paul Spencer, he is a, CTO of our company. And then Mike Montgomery, our chief creative officer. And then I have a phenomenal team around me. So I bring these great minds to the table to start figuring out the problems and then an execution plan. But it really just, starts going through those steps.
I love that because you're literally slowing yourself down. I think a lot of us, when we're not getting the results that we want, or we're experiencing setbacks potentially, or we're at a crossroads not knowing where to go, we can engage in what we call methodless enthusiasm, right? We just start taking action to try to fix things, but we're not necessarily at our best. We're usually in those moments highly anxious, right? And what's the saying? When the more anxious you are, the dumber you are. Like your thinking is compromised. And here, instead of just jumping immediately into action, you actually even before you get into problem solving, you slow yourself down and say, hey, how's this thing going? How's my mind? How's my body? Let's get that in tune so that I can actually be at my best. And then what is the best way forward, as opposed to just attacking the problem and hoping that it's like throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks, right? Like
That's it.
Your approach is a lot more strategic. I love that.
Yeah. There's a book, and I'm blanking on the author, but this is for Eric here. It's called The One Thing.
The One Thing.
Oh, I was waiting for you to do.
How?
Like, see, even Steve knew I was handing you a ball.
Steve, good to have you here, man.
But this book, The One Thing, and that's what basically. I always joke that, and it's a great book, interesting, easy read, but it really could have been summarized in a blog post, right? Is because really at the end of the day, the whole premise of the book is what's the one thing that will have the greatest impact on everything.
Right.
And I love how you have in that whole process the idea of taking control of what you have control over.
Right. Right.
And focusing in, and how you worded that is once you've centered yourself, once you've taken that moment to breathe, to really kind of reflect, now it's what do I have control over and what's the most important thing? And what a great process to go through with people.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's liberating when you have a framework, because when you hit in those tricky situations and you've had experience getting through it in the past, it gets easier and easier every time.
Right.
Which is great. And then I'm just a big fan of frameworks because it gives you structure on how to deal with the situation. Right?
And you've decided how you're going to respond to the situation before you're in the thick of things, right? Because I think in the thick of things, it's again natural for our fight and flight mechanism to kick in. The amygdala starts to fire, cortisol and adrenaline pumping through our body. And again, our higher thinking faculties are actually compromised in that moment.
Yeah, but I want to know this, okay? Now let's get honest here. This is living richly. There's vulnerability here. When your wife comes to you and she's got a real issue to deal with, do you say to her, honey, I need to fast for 2 days. I got to check my calories. I'll get back to you in a week.
My framework for business is very different from my framework in my marriage and my framework as a father.
Yeah.
Let's just say that probably wouldn't go really well. Hold on, babe. Let's get the water out.
Yeah. You know where that water is going.
Yeah, right, exactly. She might be applying a little bit of pressure there beyond you. What I love about the conversation so far and you telling your story is one, again, this, the leap of faith, but the little by little, slowly by slowly, that you literally, one decision at a time, one challenge at a time, have been building your faith muscle. It like someone would build muscle at the gym, right? You don't go in and start. If you don't exercise, you don't go in and start trying to bench 300 pounds. You're gonna hurt yourself. You've been building that muscle over years, and so someone might be listening and going, "Oh yeah, that sounds so unreachable for me." And I guess the encouragement would be, you got to start somewhere, right? You got to start somewhere.
Yeah. Obviously, this has been almost 20-year journey. Even before the businesses, it's been a journey, and you accept that life is a journey of self-discovery, right?
Right.
And a good example is when we started our coaching, right? We had some things that I needed to work on if I was able to get that business to the next level, right? And you always get to these evolutionary moments, and something has to change inside you for you to drive the company to another level, because that company is run by someone who is not you right now. That is a different person who's running a $1 million company, a $10 million company, a $15 million company, which was CanvasPop's height. Now I'm trying to build $1 billion platform with Remix. It's a different human being that is running that business. So it's a journey of evolution and identifying certain things that you need to change or you need to edit to be able to be that person that can handle that type of business.
Can I
love that piece about becoming more, right?
Yeah.
That as you follow your dream, you're going to be invited to step up, that the dream will always be bigger than you.
Correct.
And that's the power of it, is that it pulls you forward into that better version of yourself. You are the same person. You're just a more evolved version of yourself in order to pursue it, right?
I always say, it's so funny. I always tell people, I'm like, you'll be judged for what you're doing right now at that moment, because people don't know the inside of you. You're not judged for what you will become. And if you're the type of person that's believes in nonstop evolution and nonstop improvement, then that person is not going to judge you for what you are. They're going to judge you because they're going to know what you're going to become.
Yeah.
And many of the investors, all my investors that invested into me over the years, and I've had some very sophisticated investors around my circle, they know that whatever they're investing into is not the thing that's going to be the thing. It's the thing that I'm going to take with my team and evolve it into something bigger, and the trust that I am going to do whatever is necessary on my part to become the person necessary to grow that type of business or be the leader of that type of company.
Yeah.
Right?
So I'm curious, you mentioned coaching a number of times. Pretend Eric's not in the room. Okay. Eric's not here. It's just you and I having a conversation
I'm
now.
still here.
We're, and you have been working with Eric for a number of years now. We often will talk about on the podcast, again, whether you're in business or in your personal life, the value of having a mentor or a coach or somebody who is kind of speaking to life. What has been for you the big take? Why do you keep coaching? Why do you believe in coaching as part of this process for you?
So I actually have a network of coaches, and they all take care of different verticals. Okay. So if I'm an MMA fighter, for example, okay, I've got a wrestling coach.
Are you an MMA fighter?
Let's not get into it. I was big into karate back then.
Okay, let's pretend I'm MMA.
Remember, Eric's not here.
Oh, right, sorry.
I am a big MMA fan.
Yeah.
You've got your wrestling coach. You've got your jiu-jitsu coach, right? You've got your boxing coach. They're different coaches for different disciplines. And then the greatest martial artists like, Georges St. Pierre can put it all together in an amazing, beautiful way. So Eric is my mindset coach, right? Eric is the one who helps me to say, okay, what are my limiting beliefs and how am I going to get around that? How am I going to overcome that? Number two, I have business coaches. I have people in my network that build multi-billion-dollar companies that I speak to once a quarter around some very, specific strategic issues, right? Then number three, actually, my last company was a lot of self-funding. I raised a little bit of money, but now, I'm getting into the venture game. So I got a venture coach who was a former very experienced venture capitalist to say, okay, well, what are the things that I need to change in my approach now as I'm building a venture-backed company as opposed to a bootstrap company? So the way I look at it is, you're an athlete going out there every day in the ring. You need coaches to take a look at every different vertical so you can keep working on them. And then you need, every athlete looks at video. They look at tape, and that's an important part of the game. So it's critical. It's absolutely critical.
What would you say, you refer to the importance of mindset. We talk a lot about mindset on the show. It's one of the four elements of nature, right? Water being the element that speaks of the mind and the intellect. In the last couple of years, if we look at that framework, what would you say has been the most significant evolution in the way that you think and in your self-talk, and perhaps even a limiting belief that you've had to overcome?
I think there are, over the evolution over the last several years, there's two things. One, you realize that it's okay to go into the fog, and everybody goes into the fog at a certain point. And when you're in the fog and you're looking for light, in business, it's product market fit, or it's, something strategic that you need to do to get to the business to the next level. You have to accept that the fog is an okay place to be, and there's a process to get out of the fog and see the light with you and your team and get through that. So I think that is one thing that I learned a lot about through coaching, is when you're in the fog, what is the framework you got to do to get out of the fog? Number two, over the years, I've realized no matter how experienced an entrepreneur is, venture capitalist, startup person, no matter how successful they are, as I get to know more and more and more of them, behind the scenes, they're all trying to figure it out. Okay. Now, they could be trying to figure it out at a different level,
right?
But they're all at a different level trying to figure out at whatever stage they're at. So as long as you commit to a complete lifelong, long journey of evolution, and then realize that you're going to get those spots, plus you have moments of amazing things and excellence and things working and flying. And it's just a fun, amazing journey. But the key is to keep pushing out of that barrier and etching away at what you're not seeing or what you haven't become yet. Go. I
love you saying that around the concept of, no matter how big you are, no matter how successful you are, at the core, we all have our same insecurities and our struggles. And so often that's what keeps a lot of people, entrepreneurs, from taking the leap, from people who are just, wanting to live their best life and not really stepping out and doing that, is they look at other people and go, yeah, but you're different, or you've got all this going for you. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're a 10 million, 100 million, $1 billion company, or individual leading one of those companies. There are at your core some of the same struggles and the same insecurities that we all face.
Absolutely. But one commonality I have discovered amongst the individuals that are, doing long-term things and seem like they're just constantly evolving their businesses or their companies or themselves, is this absolute obsession over self-discovery, self-improvement, reinventing yourself. So when you look at videos of them being interviewed, 10 years before of what they are when they're on stage in front of thousands of people, if you look at that, it's such an evolution that didn't take overnight, but they committed to it over years.
Right.
It's like several years ago, I couldn't do this podcast.
Right.
I had too much anxiety. I had, and I was, I was nervous. I had a lot of stage fright. When we got together and started coaching, I said, that's the one thing that I want to change, because people that know me, that are close to me, they know my thoughts. They know my ideas. They know, they know how I think about business, but people on the outside don't, because I'm too fearful to stand in front of the mic.
Right.
So we worked on physiology. We worked on breathing techniques. Eric is like, Naz, you realize that you're just forgetting to breathe.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
I still remember that moment. He goes, you're right.
And once we went through that and I got more comfortable, I'm like, okay, finally I can get my message out there, and I'm not depending on other people to own the message while I'm in the back just doing the work and drudging along. So that's a big, big unlock. But there's other things now that I need to keep evolving, right? So, yeah.
And I love that, because the fear of public speaking, like, it's right there with the fear of death, right? Like, it's the two greatest fears often. And the joke is, if people get to choose between being in the box or giving the eulogy, most people would rather be in the box, okay? Because it's a real thing. But whether it's overcoming a fear of public speaking, whether it's learning to overcome the fear of failure, again, it's that little by little, step by step, the micro evolutions where you commit yourself. You may not know what it's going to look like a year from now. I mean, when you first launched out, you had no idea you'd have to work on, I'm sure, some of the skill sets you've had to develop over time, but you would have never got to where you are unless you took those early steps, right?
Absolutely. I did a post on X just yesterday, actually, and I just said, just effing start. Just start.
Love that.
And it was a picture of me in 2005 rolling varnish on DNA portraits in my 700 square foot apartment with a large format printer in the back. And I was rolling these, printing these art pieces of artwork, shipping them around the world. And everyone walking into my apartment, it smelled like ink, and I smelled like ink, you know, and everyone going like, what is going on here?
Right.
But you have this vision of what this thing can turn into and can become. And at that moment, you might not know, but it's the daily commitment to improvement, evolution, continuously thinking about new ideas, experimenting. And I go back to my science background. It's all just experiments.
Right.
You have a creative idea, you run an experiment, you look at the data, and it's either validating or invalidating your hypothesis, then you go back to it. And these ideas are creative ideas. They can, I don't know where they come from the human brain, but you put it through that process. And that's all we're doing. It's just series of hypotheses, experiments, looking at data. Is it working, not working, and adjusting? That's all life really is. It's just science. We're all scientists.
Before we move too fast, you said something a moment ago about that post on X, right? Just fucking start. And I think there are folks watching the show right now. You're tuning in and you've been waiting for a sign. You've been waiting for a word from the universe. You've been waiting for some kind of sign. You just got the sign. The sign is just fucking start. Stop waiting. Start creating the life that you want.
So good. So good. We talked a lot about the success. Have you ever failed?
Oh, gosh, yeah. I mean... Geez, where do I start? The list is way too long because
What's a big failure? What's a big failure and what did you learn from it?
First of all, there's micro failures sometimes during the day, some during the week, during the month, and then micro successes. And these micro successes build up to be larger successes. Maybe I can bring up something that's a little bit more significant and difficult, and maybe your audience will appreciate a really difficult story. So there was a period where CanvasPop was absolutely flying. Sales were going through the roof. It was about 2014. The culture inside the company was absolutely phenomenal. And but the problem inside is, my ambition was bigger for what the company was. So we started opening up these different innovation tracks, which I figured out at a different time how to handle your execution layer, your innovation layer, which we won't get into, but I was still experimenting with it at the time. And there's an app that we invested into, that we grew internally inside the company, and it ended up getting traction. Then I had a two-headed monster. One was going really well, but the other one was going really well as well. It was a GIF app called PopKey, and it started getting a ton of traction. And then, I made the decision of trying to manage two teams to be able to run both of them. And, I ended up getting split. My mind was split in two completely different directions. PopKey ended up ultimately failing because it was we just didn't have the focus. And then the other business, CanvasPop, their sales started decreasing and competition started increasing, and we dropped we kept our eye off the ball, right? We dropped the ball there. So I had to shut down PopKey. I had to go back to CanvasPop, make massive changes and reset everything, in, I think it was like 2016, and went from 30, 40 employees to 8.
Wow.
And a complete lack of confidence to those 8 people. And at that moment, I had to look deeply internally about who I am, what kind of leader I am, and so on. And at that moment, you just take one step at a time. And after that, I never stopped appreciating the thing that's in front of you and making that the best thing humanly possible. So CanvasPop, I polished it with a great group of amazing people to turn it into the most polished, perfect canvas printing company in the world, which ended up resulting in a success. And now the new company, Remix, it's 100% focused on that and that only, but it's a much bigger vision.
Yeah, it's so powerful. And I know because of our work together, and you've talked about this outside in various opportunities where you've been given to share your story, you place a really high value on your employees. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So One common thread with all the businesses or all the brands is this obsession with service, right? It is the user experience on the application that you're building. It is the backend infrastructure providing the speed of the application. It is, now I'm in the Web3 space, and it's all about community. So building your community, treating your community like gold. And that service has been a common thread through all my businesses. And what that does is it leaks over to my team and my employees. And for them, it's just really their experience working with your company. And the people that are on my team have a million choices of where to go. They're highly talented. They're highly recruited at some of the top tech companies in the world. But why are they working with us? And it's creating this beautiful user experience for them.
Love that.
To know that they're becoming better and more valuable just by sheer association with the company. From the technologies that they use to how we communicate, my last company, when it was more mature, all of my senior people had coaches. They had personal coaching as well. So not only were they able to experiment with new technologies, but they're also doing self-improvement also.
Right.
We're a small startup now, so we did a bit of that as a group, but as time grows, they'll get more of that as well. So, at the end of the day, we're all just people coming up with ideas and executing them, especially the space that I'm in. And that's all about your team. It's all about a group of people that are bonding together to create something great. So how can you not create an amazing culture for them?
Yeah, and the investment in your people. I love how you've talked about that. One of the things that we recognized a number of years ago at Rhapsody is that if we're going to be really effective in supporting the companies that we work with, it was not just working with the key leaders, but working with the entire teams, as much as we can, to be involved with helping support the people who are supporting the leader with the vision.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So you're involved in this really cool new venture called Remix. Give us your elevator pitch. What's it about?
Sure. So when we were with CanvasPop, we, printed for, hundreds of photographers and digital artists over the years. We had some great relationships in that space. And, as we were building Canvas, our other previous commerce companies, one thing that we've always noticed, which was a problem, is that these creatives want to sell physical products, but they can't do it in a profitable way. So they usually start an e-commerce site, or they go on to an e-commerce platform or a marketplace. They put a piece of apparel up or artwork or design a toy or some sort of physical product. They try to drive traffic to the site, but that's not enough to drive sales. And then they start paying for traffic that eats into their margins. And then they start paying for a bunch of clicks that don't end up in sales. And it's really difficult to do it in a profitable way. At the tail end at CanvasPop, we had an innovation team: Mike Montgomery, Paul Spencer, Zach James, myself. And we started working with augmented reality, NFTs, blockchain, AI, and how it intersects with creativity. And we ended up taking all of those pieces of technology, creating a platform to help designers and artists to be able to sell product in a digitally native way that decreases marketing expenses, increases sales, and taps into a massive community, which we can get into the details if you'd like, but that's the core concept of it.
So what about over the next number of years? So what's in store for you? We're sitting down talking in 5 years. What's going to be the headlines?
So, like I mentioned, the common thread is always evolve forever, and the platform we're building now, and the group and the team that I put together for this venture, it's almost limitless to where this creativity platform can go. And what's exciting is now my business does not have any confines in terms of where it could potentially go.
Right.
Where my previous businesses, I was in a bit of a box, So number one is this constant evolution of where the product can go. Number two, it's creating the world's most, supportive, creative community in the world to be able to elevate as many creatives as possible that are touching our platform or working with us. And then number three, it's creating an amazing culture. And as long as you work on those three attracts, then the world is, a great place to be.
Yeah. So powerful again to hear you, even though your current venture, it builds on everything you've done before, but continues to be true to who you are. It continues to like when you went back to what's got you started in the beginning, you've continued to just be true to those themes, those values, and they've led you to where you are today. What word of advice would you give to a young entrepreneur that is ready to launch or take a big risk and wants to follow their dream, given everything that you've learned? What would be your word of advice to them watching the show right now?
So, if I were to look at an entrepreneur and talk to them, I would say, number one, there's never going to be a perfect time to start. So you just have to start. That's the first thing, and start executing. Don't keep talking about it and studying it and writing business plans about it. You just have to actually start. Number two, be extremely passionate about the problem you're solving or the product that you're building, because things get so difficult at certain points, and it's that passion and that belief that you are going to need to get over those hurdles. Number three, create a phenomenal team around you. Not only your co-founders have to be 100% on board, but the early team that you bring in, they have to be totally aligned in a vision, and make sure you attract quality people and treat them well. And number four, accept that this is a marathon, not a sprint. And you have to commit to it for 20 years, okay, or 30 or whatever. And it's a nonstop process of evolution. Your problems don't stop at $1 million in revenue or 10 million in revenue, or you raise $20 million in venture capital. It just evolves, and we talk about new levels, new devils. So accept that's an evolutionary process and enjoy it.
Yeah, that's so good. And the advice you just gave, whether someone is starting a business of their own or is pursuing any dream, right? Those words of wisdom will serve them really well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, last question for you. You've done great. This has been really
amazing.
good. I thank you so much for being a part of this, because this is just so much good stuff here. We're called Living Richly, the Living Richly podcast. What does living richly mean to you?
Oh, great question. So living richly for me means everyone that you come in contact with or comes in contact with the thing that you're creating leaves, whether it's a reason, a season, or a lifetime, in an elevated state or a better person, or they remember that positive experience. And that starts with your children, your wife, your family, your employees, your community, your customers or your users, your investors, and then as many people as you can touch to try to elevate them, and they remember that being with that person or you're being close, they got into an elevated state or learned. If that to me is living richly.
Love that answer. Love that answer. How can people connect with you? I mean, you've been here on the show. I know you're big on LinkedIn, but where could people connect with you?
So I'm most active on LinkedIn, as you guys know, X as well. So you could find me at Nazim Ahmed. I think I handle just Naz. Remix is remx.xyz. So you could check out the site there, and so
awesome. We'll
put all you looking for part 2 of this.
We'll definitely have to have you back. This has been fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your story. Again, I knew this was going to be a great show just because of the relationship that we have. Thank you for being part of this and for blessing our listeners really with your courageous story. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in today. We hope you've enjoyed the show. So much great wisdom shared about pursuing your dreams and not living the supposed life. We remind you to like, share, subscribe so that you don't miss any of the episodes. And if you're enjoying the content, please share it. Leave us a testimonial. This really helps the show gain more traction. Our YouTube channel has really been blowing up, so you want to make sure to subscribe there. We also encourage you to go to our website, livingrichly.me, where you can find all the episode show notes and other helpful tools. Again, until next time, thanks for joining in. Keep living your best life.